Lesson number 70 is about probability and designated order. And here's a definition for probability. It is the number of favorable outcomes over the total number of possible outcomes. So perhaps you're talking about winning the lottery. If you say, well, the chance of winning the lottery is 1 in 1 million, that means the number of favorable outcomes, that would be you winning the lottery, would be 1. And the total number of possible outcomes, well, if you said it was 1 in 1 million, there would be 1 million total possible outcomes. So you could write your probability just like this if you were talking about 1 in a million. Now let's look at a few problems that have to do with probability. The first question says, a fair coin is tossed 3 times and comes up heads each time. What is the probability that the coin will be a head on the next toss? So a fair coin, that just means the coin's not weighted, so it should land on heads half the time and tails half of the time. But this coin, it was tossed 3 times and came up heads each time. Sometimes that can happen. What is the probability the coin will be a head on the next toss? Well, if it's a fair coin, it doesn't matter what has happened before, because when you toss it, the probability will always be the same. It will always be 1/2 of a chance that you'll get a head and 1/2 of a chance that you'll get a tail. So what's the probability that the coin will be a head on the next toss? Since it doesn't matter what happened before, it will be 1/2. Now the other way we could report our answer would be to say 50%, because we often express probabilities as percents. And a third way we could express our answer would be to say 0.5. It's less common to express probabilities as a decimal, but we could do that, and it's still the correct answer because it's equivalent to 1/2 and 50%. Let's look at our next problem. 6 green marbles and 8 red marbles are placed in a container. 1 marble is drawn and then dropped back into the container. A second marble is drawn and also is dropped back into the container. Both of these marbles were red. If another marble is drawn, what is the probability it will be red? So let's draw a picture of our scenario. We've got our container, and within our container we have 6 green marbles. So if we have 6 green marbles, we'll draw them out. And we have 8 red marbles. Now the question says 1 marble is drawn and then dropped back into the container. A second marble is drawn and also dropped back into the container. Both of the marbles that were drawn out were red. So maybe they were these 2 marbles. We took them out and then we put them both back in. If another marble is drawn, what is the probability it will be red? Well, if it's totally random, the one that we draw, well, we can see in here there's 8 red and there's 6 green. So 8 plus 6, that must be equal to a total of 14. So that would be the number of marbles that we have in total. We know probability is the number of favorable outcomes over the number of total possible outcomes. So red, well, there's 8 reds over 14 total. So 8/14 would have to be our answer. We need to reduce this if we report it as a fraction, and that would be, well, if we cut them both in half, that would be 4/7. So 4/7 would be the probability that both of these would be red. A fraction is a great way to report your answer for probability. If you wanted to turn this into a decimal and a percent, you could, but you don't have to. Let's look at our next example. A fair coin is tossed 4 times. What is the probability that the first 2 times come up heads and the last 2 times come up tails? Well, if we look at this, fair coin is tossed 4 times. So we're going to look at the probability that the first 2 times come up heads. So we're going to say the probability the first time is a head, the second time is a head, then the next 2 times have to be tails. So probability of heads first and second, then tails third and fourth. Now we know each of these. We know the probability that we'll get a head the first time is 1/2 if this is a fair coin. We know the probability we'll get a head the second time is 1/2. The probability we'll get a tails the third time is 1/2. The probability we'll get a tails the fourth time is 1/2. Now when we've got a problem like this, where we have the fair coin being tossed 4 times, and they're happening in a row, and we want a specific thing to happen, well, in order to find out the overall probability, we have to multiply all these numbers together. We're going to have a very unlikely chance that we get this exact order. And the chance that we get that exact order is the product of 1/2, 1/2, 1/2, and 1/2, or 1/2 to the 4th power. Well, 1 times 1 times 1 times 1 is 1, and 2 times 2 times 2 times 2, we know that's 2 to the 4th power, and 2 to the 4th power must be equal to 16, so we've got our answer. The probability that we'll get a head, and then a head, then a tail, then a tail, would have to be 1/16. That means it only happens, theoretically, 1 out of every 16 tries. Lesson practice will be on page 287. Make sure you've got your notes complete, and I'll see you during our next class.